My name is Dr. Julie Engelfinger. Manuscript development is a stepwise process. You need to develop a clear timeline, obtaining appropriate collaboration and input all along the way. The process will necessitate planning, deciding on authorship, acknowledgments, and phases early, and then writing the paper, preparing it assiduously, and finally submitting it. The likelihood that your paper will be published and where and how quickly depends on the question you set out to study, your methodology, meaning the study design, method of data accrual and analysis, and how you present your findings. Here are some general pointers. Consider your paper as a narrative with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Aim for clarity. Use direct, clear language. Avoid jargon, hyperbole, and cliches. And use an active voice when possible, and always use a collegial, respectful tone. When writing, use varied sentence structure. Avoid redundancy, though you can reiterate key points at appropriate places. Consider how your manuscript will look. Use subheadings, short paragraphs, graphs, and illustrations as appropriate. And be sure you are as concise as possible. Take some preemptive steps as you carry out your project. There are steps in manuscript planning that you can coordinate with doing your research. For example, you can outline the paper as you plan your research project, and you can develop the background in different sections, including methods, as you write the necessary documents for an institutional review board for a clinical study. You will then have a good idea about the potential tables and figures that you are going to need. Once you have the results of the study and the analysis, you will generate the results section and actually create those tables and figures, then finish writing and obtain input from colleagues. The sequence and timing before data analysis are to determine authorship, outline your introduction and methods, and consider what you need to do to include different data as figures and tables. After data analysis, you need to finish writing the results section, compile and put together your discussion, and finally, at the end, write an abstract. Another approach is a visual approach. It is a way to help you look at your progress as displaying the sections of your manuscript as if you're creating a poster presentation for a meeting. That will allow you to see what you still need. Now I'm going to discuss some general guidelines for writing a paper. These days, brevity is important, so aim for a paper that is 15 pages or fewer. The lengths of each section are shown here. Your introduction should be about 1 page in length. Include a brief summary with the key background information on why the study is important, including general points first and specific points second. The final sentences should clearly state the hypothesis you studied. For example, we performed a single-center randomized trial to assess XXX. Avoid including a detailed literature review in your introduction or background. That will be too long. For example, aim for 40 references or fewer. Don't assume that your readers, many of whom will be outside your field, will know anything about why the question is relevant, so explain it well and avoid jargon, and be ready to revise. Next, you will want to write the methods section. Be very sure to include a clear description of your study design, the study participants, including the inclusion and exclusion criteria, and the exposures or interventions you used. Note the primary and secondary outcomes very specifically and how the data were collected. Then describe the statistical analyses that were used. Be sure to include registration of the study for clinical work and describe institutional review board approval and informed consent. Further, if your trial is industry-sponsored, describe the role of the sponsor clearly. Be sure that you do not omit critical details and avoid imbalances in subsections. Do not use huge detail for some sections and almost nothing in others. Results are the center of any study. These include what happened, perhaps why it happened, and how they were analyzed. So, in looking at your results, you will need to decide what to put in the results section. In writing your results section, decide which results are critical to show in detail, but present all the relevant results in the results section. Use tables and figures to summarize your findings. The first table should include characteristics of the study participants. Use the text to clarify the main findings of those tables and figures, referring to each one as appropriate. You do not need to repeat all of the numbers in the tables within the text. Also, be sure to leave out irrelevant material, so it's a balance. Finally, don't leave out results you don't like. Next, you will want to write the discussion. The discussion of your paper allows you as the investigator to summarize your work and put it in context within your field. Start by summarizing the main findings in a paragraph and place your findings in the context of relevant previous work in the field. Be sure to address limitations and end with a concise summary. The length of a discussion should be about 4 pages maximum. Be sure not to claim priority. If you say that your study is the first, you may find out after review that someone else is actually first. Don't include a long, comprehensive review of the literature. As in the introduction, make it relevant, but don't be exhaustive. Also, be sure not to focus on criticism of other studies. The investigators who wrote those studies may be reviewing your paper. Do not ignore or be overly defensive about the limitations of your paper. Let the data stand for themselves. Don't overinterpret the data either.